introduction. I'm going to go ahead and do an introduction for Nina. I've known Nina for many, many years now. She is a technical delegate. She's I'm an announcer at the Silverwood shows, the recognized shows. She's also a judge. She judges the events. She also judges dressage. So we just love having Nina here today to tell us about getting ready for recognized shows. And as I was stating earlier, this is part 2 of a 3-part series. The first part, we did record it, so it is available on the idcta.org website. If you are a member, you will be able to access the Zoom library. If you're not a member and you want to get access to the recording, become a member. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nina. I'm here and I'm excited to hear about part 2.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Over in part 1, we talked about all kind of preparations, and there was a lot of information, and when we certainly didn't want to scare anybody away. So you could kind of say we might have overwhelmed you with too much information, but just realize that doing even some of the things that we suggested is going to make your experience better, smoother. You do 100%, you're probably an overachiever. So, that's all good too. But this session, we're going to focus on practicing things you can do at home with your horse, with yourself, to get ready for actually performing at a show, because it's all about building that background knowledge and building your experiences ahead of time, so that when you go to the show and, say you're nervous, your horse may be nervous, you're not having to tackle some of these things you could have practiced at home. So that's what today is going to be about. All kinds of things you can practice. So Angelica, go ahead, let's start the show. Okay, so I like that. Time spent practicing is more than that spent riding, and that is so true, because riding, really, if you count the minutes that you're really on your horse a week, they're not that many. So there's so many things that you can do, both mounted and unmounted, to make your experience at a show go more smoothly. So I don't want to I'm not going to keep reading to you, but I am going to read what I wrote on here, and it's that practice may not make something perfect, but it can help in many ways. There's no perfect when it comes to dressage. It's always a learning experience. Even the top riders will say, I need a coach. I have to have somebody on the ground, because I know I'm making mistakes. I know I'm developing a bad habit. And you know what? Nobody has ever gotten 100%. So that's perfect. And that never happens. They may be getting in the 80s these days, but not 100%. So things that you can do at home is find what stresses you, so that you can work on those areas and start doing some things you've never done before, explore that uncharted territory, and both of those will increase your confidence. And that's what it's all about, is feeling comfortable with what you're doing. What's the next slide? This one I love. Can you see it? I don't know if we're blocking this. Can we maybe?
Well, each person is responsible for their own view of the attendees. So you can actually shrink it by minimizing it if you want.
Okay.
So everybody can do their own, everybody's responsible for their own screen with the view of the attendees.
Okay, so let me see what I can do.
You can do the little minus will shrink it down.
Okay, there. So there we go. That way I'm not going to be looking at myself. It's kind of discerning when you're talking and you look at yourself on the side. So I'm glad I removed it. Anyway, I found this cartoon. I thought it was really cute. So Fergus says, they want me to step into the trailer. I don't step into trailers. They are insisting it's time to get creative and then think outside the box. So I wanted to start with this cartoon, because trailering, if you're going to a show off the grounds, is really a very important part of showing. Angelica and I have both been to shows where people have struggled getting to the show, or maybe never got to the show because their horse wouldn't load, or yeah, or they've had trouble getting the horse home, for the same reason. So practicing loading and unloading your horse is extremely important. You'll want to also practice wrapping them for shipping. It's so funny. The first time you put shipping boots on a horse, they're piaffing quite well, because some of them have never felt that sensation before. Can you go to the next slide, Angelica? There you go. So, bandaging, the tail wrap, teaching yourself how to bandage not too tight, not too loose. That all takes time and it takes practice. Whether you have those wonderfully expensive shipping boots or whether you're using cotton, wraps with polo wraps around it, it doesn't matter. There are right ways and wrong ways to put them on. So you'll want to practice that. Another thing is the horse helmet. I have seen horses get injured in trailers and riders arriving at the show and, having to come see me as the TD because the horse has been lacerated. So, practice wearing having the horse wear the shipping helmet. It doesn't feel the same as a fly hood. It's much different. Loading and unloading. Be sure the trailer is hooked up. That I know this, I may be preaching to the choir, but that is so important, because if your trailer is not hooked up and you try to load your horse in it, it's like a seesaw, and that's going to scare them perhaps permanently. So maybe even if that day you're not going to go anywhere, you're just going to practice loading and unloading. Make sure the trailer is hooked up. It's a good practice to load them calmly if you can, and then feed them, give them hay, whatever in the trailer, so they get comfortable with that. Before you go to the show, try going to other places. Have field trips to a different showgrounds, a different stable, a park, just to get your horse away from home. I have run into horses that have never been away from home, and then at age 7 they get taken to a show and they're like, they don't know what to do. They're just absolutely lost. So the more different places you can go is really important. So there again, ride off the property. Horses may behave differently when they're not home. They may spook more than you thought they would. Or it's always nice if you have a bold horse. They like, new places, but you sometimes don't know the personality type of your horse until you get them away from home. Familiarize your horse to scary things: umbrellas, balloons, golf carts, weird animals, goats, sheep, cows, horse-drawn carriages, flowers and flags. The first time your horse sees a horse with a carriage, they'll freak out. They do not know what that horse is doing. They have no idea, and it can really blow them away. I raised my kids at home with my horses, and I let them ride their trikes up and down the stable aisle. I let them play soccer. I let them play with balloons. I let them anything that those kids could do to shell shock or whatever, get my horses accustomed to balloons flying around. I mean, these are all things that a horse needs to become familiarized with. There is a big difference between horse shows I've seen in the United States and horse shows I've seen, say in Ireland. Let's go, let's, think about a dressage show, Silverwood, for instance. Everybody's quiet and the dogs are on leashes and we're kind of all talking softly and we're not making any sudden movements. We're not opening an umbrella and near a horse. You go to Ireland, it is a free for all. There are kids driving ponies in little two-wheeled carts. There are blow-up, bouncy, those things that kids slide and bounce in with all the balls. There's fireworks. There's a merry-go-round around. Those horses just get used to all that. It doesn't bother them because they've seen it all before. What's the next slide? Practicing your test. Yes. So you'll want to practice your test at home, not always only the test, but like maybe run through your whole test. Hopefully you've memorized it. That really is important. Even if at the show you plan on having a reader, memorizing your test is so good because then you can plan ahead. You know where your transitions are. You know where you're going to have halt. But the important thing is to practice the whole test so you understand where the difficult movements may be or the difficult transitions, but then go back and practice sections so that so you're familiar with that piece. So I like this. I think we'd score a lot higher if you'd quit embellishing your halts. So practice your halts. You would be amazed at how many people don't halt. They pause, kind of like at a stop sign. That's not a halt. So when you do your halt, you want to come to a full immobile halt and then breathe deeply and count to 3 extremely slowly, like 1001, 1002, 1003. It's going to do 2 things. It's going to help you relax and it's going to help the judge realize that you did halt, because it does require at least a 3-second halt. So what is the next slide, Angelica? Okay. When you think about your test, ride it unmounted. So what I mean is, as you're in the bathtub soaking, or you're in the hot tub, if you're that lucky, go through your test, ride every movement, ride every step, feel it in your body, feel when you're going to half halt, feel when you're going to sink that hip, so that you have mentally practiced it, and it will help a lot. Visualize your horse's frame. Okay, so there's a difference between a training level frame, first level frame, second level frame, and so on. So hopefully you're all getting those horses to relax into the bit, to reach to the bit. And that's just the basics. So even at intro, you want to be able to encourage that horse to stretch forward to the bit so that his back comes up. Another thing you can practice is that every gait is the same tempo. And this is not just in your test. This is in your warm-up. This is in, when you're just riding movements. Every horse has the rhythm at which the tempo at which they look their best. And you want it a tempo that's slow enough that the horse can actually use their bodies and, relax, but yet not so slow that they're sluggish. And that's that fine line. And each horse is different. So what I've always done is I found a song a very familiar song that I know that fits that particular horse I'm riding. And whether it's walk, trot, or canter, I'm riding to that tempo. So, find your horse's song. Hopefully you'll like it. Don't have to sing all the words. You can hum. It's okay. I've talked about the halt already. Move from the halt to the trot without walk steps. If you read your test carefully, many of them will say halt can be executed through the walk. So that means you come in at a trot, you can have some walk steps and then halt. I'm pausing for the halt. Okay, now when you take off, it doesn't say through the walk. It says trot. So you have to keep your horse in front of you, if you know what I mean, in front of your leg, alert, but immobile, so that when you go into the trot without any walk steps. Because if you do walk steps, you're not going to get as good a score. Talking about halts for a minute. Square is nice. Of course, we all want them to be square. But the judge cannot always tell if they're square if the judge is only at C. They cannot see all four legs sometimes. So that's why being immobile is more important, because you may not be square, but you're immobile. The judge might think you're square and you're going to get a better score. They, of course, can tell if the haunches swing. So you'll want to be sure to keep the horse behind you. And, if you can get the front legs square, the back legs will come too. But the judge really may only be able to see the front legs. Now I'm saying you're not I don't want you to cheat the judge. That's not the point. But the point I'm trying to make is when you come to the halt and you halt, be immobile. Don't fuss with it. You come in the halt, oh, he's not square, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to push this. Okay, don't do that, because then the halt's not immobile. You're going to get more points for an unsquare immobile halt than you're going to get for a halt that finally settled down, if you're following what I'm saying there. When you do your halts, practice your salutes. Practice taking your reins in one hand and dropping your head in your hand. Most judges will look for your right hand to salute. And they may say, oh, I didn't see a salute, because maybe you kind of half saluted with your left hand and they're really not looking there. The important thing to do is make sure you salute without a whip in your hand. So, you kind of have to plan ahead. Say you're coming in and you know that your first turn after the halt is to the left. Chances are you're going to carry the whip in your left hand. So that's going to free up your right hand to do your salute. Another thing to practice at home is bending through the corners. Very often people try to ride the corner by pulling the horse with the rein. That counter bends them, and that's going to have you lose points. So if you can, and if you understand what a shoulder four is, ride a shoulder four through your corners. You don't have to go deep, deep, deep. That depends on the level of which you're riding. So training level, intro training only does a 10, the half volte when you come from the side down center line. The half volte is a 10-meter circle. That's as deep as you want to go into the corner at that level. As you move up, when your circles become smaller, 8s, 6s, of course, then you're going to go deeper and deeper. But don't think you have to ride deep into the corner at intro level. It's more important to bend through the corner, keep the horse balanced, and keep the hind end underneath than to go deep in the corner and and have your horse brace or be stiff. So just kind of ride it like you're going to ride a half circle. Shoulder 4 that's something that will help you with your circle. You really want to start using your inside leg to outside hand connection if you're at that point in your training yet. If not, just make sure you use your inside leg to bend, to cue. Okay, we talked about that. Learning to switch your whip from hand to hand. There's a correct way to switch your whip. I'm going to turn my picture on. Let's see if I can do that. There's Angelica.
Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. So you're riding, right? And your whip is hanging down. This pen is going to be my whip. Some people go like this, and their hands are all over the place. That's not how you switch your whip. What you do is you ease your whip up a little bit. You turn it over, you take, right, now I'm gonna, wait a minute. Okay, so you turn your whip over, you take your other hand, take the whip is upside down now. And then you come down and then you let the whip slide through your fingers. I'm gonna show you again. So you're here, you turn the whip over, turn your thumb over, grab your whip, and you're down. That's the least obtrusive way to switch your whip hand. I may be preaching to the choir here, but it's amazing how many people have not yet learned that. Okay, what's the next slide, Angelica? Lunging. This was actually a whole session at the USDF convention taught by Lilo 4. So this is how important lunging is. Hopefully you are lunging at home. Hopefully there's many reasons your horse needs to learn to lunge. Perhaps it's to take off a little energy, especially if it's a young horse. Maybe the horse is recovering from an injury and you can't ride, but you need to exercise them. There are right ways and wrong ways to lunge, and I've seen both. Wrong ways would be to lunge in a halter and just snap the lunge line to the ring of the halter. Wrong way would be to have a bit and snap the lunge line to just one side of the bit, the inside. Wrong would be walking in a circle like the lady above here. In the slide, you can see she's walking. Don't walk. You pivot. You pivot around one leg, your inside leg. How you hold the lunge line, don't wrap it around your hand. Whatever you do, you could lose your finger. Loop it back and forth, the extra lunge line, loop it back and forth so that it's not wrapped around your hand. You can see she's lunging in a halter. Don't do that. If you have a lunging cavesson, put it on. Side reins, put them on. You don't have to have a lunging surcingle. You can put the side reins around your stirrup leathers. So the bottom picture is showing like an expert lunger. This guy has got everything. You don't need all that, but I wanted to show the two extremes from someone who has a lot to learn to someone who has a lot to teach. But you can lunge in your bridle, but then you want to make sure you put the lunge line, through the inside ring of the bit, over the pole, and to the outside ring of the bit, so that you've got control. Lunge whip. Make sure you've got a long enough lunge whip so that the horse learns to respect that. And you form a V with the lunge line and the whip. So you've got that V. and the horse is the bottom of the V, the top of the V. You're the bottom of the V, and you're pivoting, and the horse is going around. And then, you know, if you're having to teach the horse to lunge, sometimes you need a helper to help those first steps, or you just start at the walk. A very small circle, you start at the walk. And once the horse learns to whoa and, you know, walk, whatever your verbal signal is going to be, then you move into the trot, and you know, make sure they learn the word T-rot. I've always said T-rot. Germans kind of go make a little sound I can't do. And then a different cue for canter up or whatever. And whoa is a big one. And make sure that when they stop, they don't turn into you. You don't want them to turn and face you. You want them to stay on that lunging circle. So the reason you need to practice this at home is you may be lunging your horse at a show, and there's always to be a separate lunge area. No riders in the lunge area. That's dangerous. And usually the lunge area is away from the warm-up area, because sometimes horses get pretty frisky, and then it'll upset the horses that are getting ready to go in the ring. What's our next slide? Okay, so this shows just the very, very basic equipment. That's a lunging cavesson, on the right, if you haven't seen that before. And when I was, you know, preparing this PowerPoint for you, I went on the web and typed in lunging, and whoa, there is so much there. You could spend hours just watching the videos of different lunging techniques and pieces of advice. This little cute guy on the left has a lunging surcingle. You don't have to have that, but he does have side reins, which I would recommend for sure. There's many different types of side reins. I myself like the ones with the elastic, so that there's some stretch in them. And of course, every horse is going to be different, and where you're going to put them is also going to be different. Sometimes you've got to put them a little low, some around the girth. Sometimes you're going to put them up higher. It's all depending what your goal is. But you don't want to make them too short. You don't want the horse to get behind the vertical. You don't want to teach them to get behind the bit. But yet you want them short enough that the horse does feel there's something there. What's the next video? Oh, I love this one. If the dressage arena letters made sense. Do you see what they say? OMG. I was at a convention, and Axel Steiner told a joke. I don't know if any of you know Axel. He does have a sense of humor. But anyway, he told a joke about 3 people who were in a boat. They had been on a ship, and the ship sunk, and these 3 men were in this lifeboat. And one was a king, and one was a pope, and one was a dressage judge. And so they were talking about how people treat them and how much respect they get. And the king says, well, you know, people call me, you know, my lord, your majesty, and so I have a lot of respect. And the pope says, well, people call, you know, say to me, your holiness, so I have a lot of respect. And the dressage judge said, well, when people say me, they say, oh my God. So I hope that brought a little smile to your face. That's not how judges feel, though. We want you to have a good time. We want you to come back to show another day. So even though we may look scary, we're just people, and we've been there. We've had that first ride. And don't worry about the expression on the judge's face. I know I had someone put on the internet that I was frowning at her before she went in the ring. Well, I was probably squinting because there was sun in my eyes, or there was dust in my face, or there was a fly biting my ankle. So, don't worry about the expression on the judge's face. They may be in great pain. You don't know. They're going to try to look friendly and happy, but sometimes things, they may be really, really hot or really, really cold. So just smile at them and go on about your stuff. So what's the next slide? When you go, especially for your first show, start at a level that you're confident at. Start at a level that you've schooled at home and you feel, okay, I am ready to show this off. Don't go, oh, I'm going to try first level at that show, but I've never ridden it before. That's not going to be in your best interest. And limit yourself to 2 or 3 tests a day. That is a USEF rule. Sometimes at schooling shows, people show more than those, but you're at your first show, kind of just do 2 or 3, 2 at the best, 1 if you want to start with 1, and just give it your all and then enjoy the experience. What's the next one? Okay, we talked about memorizing your test. If you have a caller, that will help you prepare for the next movement. We talked about the different different movements and transitions. The patterns in the tests, most tests are symmetrical. So if you do a half volte to the left, you're going to do a half volte to the right. So if you can memorize those patterns, it'll help you memorize the whole thing. You want to know the geometry of your arena. If you're riding in a small arena, 20 by 40, and you have a 20-meter circle at A and a 20-meter circle at C, that's going to be half the arena. So you're going to cross the center line at X. If you're riding in a large arena, it's a little bit different because the letters are spaced not the geometry isn't as good to work out. So you have to plan your movement, understand in metrics, in meters, where the different letters are, where your circle, the outside arch of your circle is going to be. Ride round circles. We judges see many, many circles at sea that have square corners. So stay out of the corners on your circle. When you do your loops, if you're in a large arena and you're doing 3 loops, they're each going to be a 20-meter half circle. If you're in a small arena and you're just doing, 1, 2 loops, each one's going to be a 20-meter half circle. So, ride them like a half circle, and that will help you. Know where each movement begins and ends. Okay, so let's say that it says A, walk. So that's easy. That's where that movement begins. But sometimes it's say maybe the walk starts at K or the trot starts at K, but the judge is going to start judging you earlier, like at A, because that's when you cross the center line. So in order to judge the preparation for that transition at K, they're actually starting to judge that movement at A. So, kind of draw your test out. So you go, okay, this is where I cross center line. This is really the beginning of the next movement. Sometimes judges have a hard time. They go, oh, something exploded. The horse exploded at A, but the next movement doesn't start till K. Where am I going to put it? Am I going to say exploded at the end of the prior movement, or am I going to say exploded at the beginning of the next movement? That's a judge's call. You'll also want to know which movements have coefficients, like your walk, flying change, and those you'll really want to make sure you practice those. practice your walk. The walk needs to have energy without rushing. We always think of the walk as this is a march. You're marching somewhere. You need to get there. So your walk has to have enough energy to be active, but not too much energy that the strides get short. There's just a fine line there, and that's something you'll have to work out. Ride from marker to marker and stay on the path. We often see people who veer off the path, kind of wiggle their way down the side. Yeah, don't do that. The diagonals go from letter to letter. So let's say you're going MX.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to turn during that corner so that you're in line. You don't want to go past M. You want to be turned onto the diagonal before M. You want to go over X. And then when you go to the other side, your horse's head should go to that letter. Your horse's head should go to that letter, and then you turn on to the side. Is that making sense? That's how those diagonals are written, letter to letter. If you have transitions, say at A, you're doing the walk, that's that transition, the judge is going to judge it as to the rider being at A. So if you transition early and the rider is way before A, the judge will say early transition or late transition. So that transition should occur when the rider's at the letter. The only thing that's different is the diagonals. They're going to look for the horse's head at that letter. Okay, what's the next one? This is important. You know, if you get a copy of the test, always have more than one and write notes on there. Okay, here's where I'm going to start my shoulder 4 to work through my corner. Here's where I'm going to half halt to get them balanced. Things like that. And talk through your test. I spend a lot of time going up and down barn aisles when I'm a TD, and I often see people sitting in a chair by themselves talking to themselves, and they're talking themselves through the test, and that's a good habit to get into. I'll see them even hold their hands up like they're holding reins, and they're riding their test. No horse in sight. That is a good practice. When you do your halts at X and G, it's when the rider is at X and G, not the horse's head. Often people do not understand where G is. When you halt correctly at G, the judge is almost going to feel like you're going to climb in the trailer with them. So, you know, use your peripheral vision so you can see where E and B is for your X. Fortunately, unfortunately, many people have ever only ridden for one judge, so they only get the viewpoint from C. So they may be making they may be weak at halts, but the judge can't pick that up because sitting at C, the judge really can't tell if you're at X. But if you have a judge on the side at or B, they can see it all. So use your peripheral vision to get yourself in the right place.
Nina,
Yeah.
Nina, this is Molly. I was just
Yeah.
going to suggest that possibly tracing your test on a, on a an outline of the ring is really quite good, because then your peripheral vision gets a place to look first. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes. And I have a set of tiny little cones, letters. And, you know, when I was working with pony clubbers and stuff, we would set up a little dressage ring, small, but proportionate. And the kids would trot their little selves, canter their little selves through their test. And, that way they're looking, they have time to look and practice where things are located. Hopefully you'll have a caller at your show. It's always good advice. It's like insurance, because sometimes our minds go blank. It happens. But rehearse with that caller. Kind of work with them so they know when to give you the next cue. You don't want them too fast. You don't want them too slow. You don't want them too soft. So, practicing with your caller is a good thing. Riding in your show clothes and your boots and your hairdo to check that they're all comfortable and that you can move in them, especially if your boots are new. You'll want to break them in till they're comfortable before you get to the show. I can't read the bottom one. Oh, I think it
says use your show tech to check for fit.
Yeah. So make sure that, that beautiful show bridle you have with all the nice, spangles on it, ride in it so that your horse is used to it too. Make sure it fits and the things aren't bothering them. And we'll get into equipment later. That's a whole another subject. What is the next slide? And then when practicing your warm-up, hopefully you kind of have a warm-up routine. And you'll want to, see how long that normally takes so that you can replicate that at your horse show. How does your horse respond in different weather and situations? I had a horse that could not stand the wind. I mean, he was a great horse, but when I was riding him into the wind versus riding him with his tail to the wind, it was two different horses. So I only knew that because I would ride him outside. If I never rode him outside until I got to a show, I wouldn't know that. So you want to see, is your horse a mudder? Can your horse handle mud? A lot of shows go on. It doesn't matter that it's raining. As long as the footing is stable, they're going to run that show. Will your horse trot through puddles? Will your horse trot over rays of light? Can your horse handle going from a dark, shady corner into the bright light? Those are all things you need to hopefully practice at home. So, think about not always riding at the same time of day. Ride early in the morning. Ride in the rain. Ride in the late afternoon. Ride inside, ride outside, the more different experiences you and your horse can have before you get to the show, the more fun you're going to have, the more confident you'll be. And work on relaxation and stretches, and learn how to stretch your horse both longitudinally and laterally. Sometimes we do these things unmounted. When you're unmounted, take your horse and turn his head so that his nose eventually touches the girth. Go the other way now, turn his head. So you can do a lot of stretching and limbering before you ever get on them. Take their front leg, pull it as you're unmounted, pull that leg forward, so that it's freeing up the shoulder and making the girth fit a little more comfortably. So all those things you can do. There's, like I said, if you do a few of these things, you're going to be ahead of the game. What's our next one? I love this. Isn't that cute? But never clip him unless you are an expert. Clipping your horse can be a traumatic experience for them, especially if you have never clipped a horse before. You don't want to do that the morning of the show. A lot of riders will clip the pole area. They'll clip the feathers off. for safety reasons, do not clip their eyelashes or the little hairs that come up over the eyes. I know some breeds do that, but it's really not good for your horse. I've seen Olympic horses that have mustaches and little beards, and that's for safety for the horse. Those are their feelers. You might clip like under the jaw, they kind of get shaggy and icky there. You can clip those hairs, no problem. Bathing your horse. Usually we bathe before we go to the show. Sometimes because you never know, some horses are difficult to bathe. What's the next one, Alicia? Angelica. Okay. And grooming things. And this, you're doing hopefully all the time anyway. Pulling your horse's mane and tail. That should be kind of an all the time thing. Never let it get away from you. Some people don't pull the tail. Some people pull the hairs on the side of the top of the tail. Kind of makes the haunches look nicer. There's so many different manes and styles. We're going to get into that. That's a whole separate thing. Make sure that your hair is neat and tucked away. And if you're going to fit it under your helmet, make sure you try that at home first, so you know if that helmet is going to fit. Wear as little jewelry as possible. What you wear under your glove on your fingers is up to you, but my husband was a farmer. Farmers that don't have fingers were probably wearing their wedding ring around farm machinery. So it just isn't a good practice to wear your rings in the barn. That's a safety thing. You can catch your finger on something and not good. Same thing with earrings. I mean, I wear earrings too, but small studs, not big danglies, not hoops, that kind of thing. Bathing your horse. Dirty manes are easier to braid than clean manes. So, I mean, if you're going to wash your mane, do it a couple days ahead, and then you're probably going to end up putting gel on it before you braid it anyway. You're going to make a checklist of things that you're going to need. Sometimes you didn't realize you needed them, but scissors, braiding yarn, or braiding rubber bands, a ladder, a step ladder, not a painting ladder, a step ladder, different sizes of combs, different sizes of clips, hair clips that you're going to use to hold the mane back, needles, not pointy ones, but the blunt tapestry. Are they tapestry needles? Or I just know they're big needles and they're very blunt, and that's that I would buy for braiding manes when I would sew in. A lot of people don't do that. Hunters do it more, or if you hire a professional braider, they often will sew in your braids using a heavy string, not even a yarn. Hair gel for your horse. What's the next one?
Oops. Okay.
This is when I was going to show you the different braiding styles. They're all good. The one on the left is a common hunter braid. And how many braids you make depends on the mane. It depends on how much of the mane you've pulled out, how thick the mane is. The one in the middle I've mostly seen on Arabians. Molly, jump in there. Is that Andalusians also sometimes? Do you know?
I don't know if
many Andalusians either use the second or third one for their manes.
Yeah.
The ones that have thicker manes that are more consistent use the second one, and the ones that have stringy parts to their mane use the other one because it's a lot easier to braid them.
Right. It's very quick. So. And I've seen other things. I've seen horses with no manes at all, where the riders just roach the mane and we're done with it, and that's fine. The horse looks very neat. I've seen fjords. No, Icelandic. Is it the Icelandic or the fjord that has the black up the
The
middle of
fjord,
it?
fjord.
Yeah, so they'll roach the mane, but then they'll clip the white part so that the black part shows through like piano keys. Looks like piano keys, and it looks really cute. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. What you want to do is neat. Let's say that maybe you don't want to braid at all, but your mane needs to be neat. There are some breeds, Friesians, for example, where the mane is kept very long. You don't want it tangling up in your reins. Neatness is the key, whatever choice you make, as long
I
as
would
it looks.
also recommend, Nina, if you're going
Yeah.
to braid your horse in a different way, that you practice that and riding with the way that you're going to braid your mane, because it may change the way you handle your hands.
Yes, yes, and that's why it's important that these are all done not at the show, but prior to the show. I know the one on the stream right can pull out pretty easily sometimes, and it can get messy looking depending on how skilled you are at braiding it. I've seen the one on the right done with 2 braids for a horse with a really thick mane. Actually, 2 French braids down it. In dressage, we do not put glitter on. Eventers can use some glitter, but not dressage people. We don't use any colored ribbons in mane. It should be discreet. So as you see, the gray horse has gray rubber bands. The chestnut horse has like a brown thread. There was a while where we were doing a little white wrap around, but it's going to draw attention where you don't want attention drawn. So you try to keep it very subtle. While I'm on subtle and discreet, I'm going to talk about fly bonnets. The rule book says fly bonnets are to be discreet, which means they should match the horse so that they're not noticeable. That's not meant to match your saddle pad or your coat. You wouldn't try to avoid putting, for example, a white fly bonnet on a black horse. That doesn't work. For one thing, it's going to pull the judge's eye to the pole, and you may not want the judge's eye there because they may not have that quite up to par yet. So match your fly bonnet to your horse if you can. So let's go on. Any questions? Molly, anyone typing anything in?
Not at this point.
Okay. Anybody want to turn their mic on and ask?
I have a question, Nina. I'd like a clarification. On the last session, we talked a little bit about saddle pads, and you were saying that the rule is now you can't have any kind of a shiny saddle pad, but there's a lot of people that have a plain color saddle pad and then maybe have the little crystal thingies on like the edging. Is that legal?
That you can do, like a little gold piping. I would not myself recommend getting rhinestones. I think that's stretching it, but they cannot be shiny. It cannot have a bold pattern, can't have stripes. It can be almost any color, but it can't be like plaid, or it can't be, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you remember, I have my burgundy one and then I've got my little crystals along the edge.
Yeah, I myself wouldn't invest in that. If
Yeah.
I was going to buy a show pad, I might do a little gold braiding or silver braiding. It's a little
Right.
more subtle. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Denise.
Hi. can you just for everyone's go over a little bit about the etiquette in going in and out of the arena? Well, actually, it's the going around the arena prior to the test, because
Okay.
that varies so much. And
Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so ideally, the arena is set in an area where the footing is the same inside the arena and outside the arena. In that case, you would go around the outside of the ring before you go into the ring. And you want to make sure you go both ways, at least both ways in front of the judges stand. So your horse can see, they see different things out of their left eye and their right eye. So you want to show them with both eyes. However, sometimes you're riding indoors and the arena is such that you cannot go around the outside of the arena. Or maybe you're at Silverwood. I'm going to use that. In some of the arenas at Silverwood, there's grass on the outside of the arena. So in an indoor situation, and in either situation, what you do is you go inside the arena before the bell rings even. And if we're really in a time crunch, I have asked my gate people, as soon as horse A salutes and steps away from the halt, send horse B in the ring. Because sometimes we're running late. We gotta move. So you walk in and you're free to do whatever you need to do, walk, trot, canter, until the judge rings the bell. At that point, you have 45 seconds to come down center line. So then you have a choice. You can either stay in the arena and just, go to the far end and make a nice half volte and come down center line, or you can exit, go around the letter A, which is out there, and come in. So you have a choice either way.
Okay, and then the other question is, when you have multiple judges, should you present or acknowledge all of them, or just the judge at C?
I have had riders do a nod, their arm is dropped in the salute. They'll do a nod to the judge at C, and then they'll do, to the A. Yeah, they will. But I mean, if you've got 5 judges, you're not gonna look like a bobblehead.
Nina, one of the other things that I've noticed in my many times at Silverwood in the judges box is that the people who have got their plan down and know whether they're going to go out of the ring or stay in the ring are much better off than someone who tries to make the decision at the moment because you haven't practiced it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Practice is the name of the game for sure. And that's why it's so important to talk to the people. And we talked about this in the last session. Get as much information about the venue you're going to show at as you can. Talk to people that have shown at Silverwood in both ring 1 and ring 3 and ring 5, so that you understand, oh, well, in 1, I don't go around the outside, but in 3 and 5, I do, so that you know that all ahead of time, and then you know how you're going to handle it when you get there.
I would say too that, if you've never been at a venue and you're not sure, like before your ride time, go talk to the ring steward and ask, what is it? How do we do this here? Find out how they want you to enter and exit the arena, and find out what they do at that particular ring.
They'll be more than happy to answer all your questions, but we'll talk more about that in our next session.
I have one more question.
Yes.
At what point in what are the circumstances that one would ask for a retest?
Oh, well, okay. I have been at a show where a cow galloped across the arena. A cow. Yeah, that's a retest situation. Very often, because the riders are on edge and nervous, they'll think something is distracting the horse and the judge doesn't. So they're not going to give you a retest. Let's say that maybe, and this is a show I've been at there where the local United Air Force weekend warriors are next door and you're doing explosions. That could be a retest concern. I've been at a show where here was the dressage arena and the little league field was right next to it and the bases were wet, so they were setting fire to the bases. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, you know?
Oh, I know.
So it's the judge's decision. I mean, if you're feeling that it's a situation that warrants a retest, you could stop the test, go up to the judge and say, Judge, I think we need to redo this test or restart this test because blah, blah, blah. The judge is either going to say, okay, or no,
Yeah. Can I ask about a specific circumstance that I encountered?
Sure.
Which was that, and it was in a recognized show, and another rider entered into my test to start theirs prior to me completing it. And they actually crossed right in front of me, forcing me to stop the ride.
Wow.
So,
Oh, yeah, I would say that the judge would probably blow the whistle, ask the other rider to leave, and then have you redo that movement.
that's what I would have anticipated. That is not what happened, but that's another story.
Okay, well, that's how I would have handled it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We're kind of a little bit past the time, but we started a little bit late. Anybody have a final question that they'd like to ask? All right, then Nina, again, wonderful information. We thank you so much for your time and
My
knowledge.
pleasure.
We really appreciate it. And we thank you all for joining today. We have our third in the series coming up. And now, Molly, it's escaping my brain what the date is.
It's March, I believe it's March 13th, but I will, there's an e-blast that just went out
It's
today
March
that
13th.
had,
Yeah,
Yeah, March 13th, right.
March 13th. Yeah.
Right. All right, fantastic. Well, really appreciate it and appreciate your time and everything. I'm looking to see because somebody just chatted here, something I wanted to see if there was a question. I don't think there is. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Nina. They also said thank you, Nina. So really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you everyone for joining today. Appreciate you being
Okay.
here. Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Stay well.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.